And as for Pam,
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Regulatory Committees. Welcome councillors, officers, and we don't have any members of the public. So this meeting is being held in the supper room at the Waihinga Centre in Martinborough Town Hall and by audio visual conference. All members participating via video conference will count for the purposes of the meeting quorum in accordance with clause 25B of Schedule 7 to the Local Government Act 2002. The meeting is being live streamed to Council's YouTube channel. Okay. So we have apologies. So we have apologies from Councillor Fox. Any other apologies?
is there an apology from Councillor Gibson for lateness?
Okay. So could I have a mover to accept those apologies? Thank you, Brenda, and a seconder. Thank you, Lee. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Now, are there any conflicts of interest for today's meeting? No. We don't have anyone registered for public participation, so there will be for the actions from public participation, there won't be any. Is there any extraordinary business to add in today? No. Cool. So before we do the confirmation of the minutes, I'd just like to ask your approval. We've got Mal online there, and welcome, Daphne. We'd like to move C2 to the climate change report to being first on the agenda. We'll do the action items report from the last meeting that was carried over, and then we'll do all the planning and regulatory, which is C1 and D1 together at the end. So it just makes the meeting flow a bit easier. So first off, we'll do the confirmation of the minutes. So we're considering the minutes of the 20th of April 2022. Are there any corrections needed to those? Right. So do I have a mover for the minutes held on the 20th of April 22? Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Brenda. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Yes. Lovely. Thank you very much. So we're up to C, what's on the agenda at C2, which is the climate change report. So welcome to you, Mel. You're online. So are you okay?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Lovely.
Cool. So sorry for my voice. I'm sick and I'm not in a room with you today. Very briefly, as Pam said already, this is the report that was supposed to be presented to you at the previous Planning and Regulatory Committee. So I will go through this report and then I will give you the latest update that happened since then. So on the risk and resilience strategy, I already presented the methodology to Finance, Audit and Risk Committee a few weeks ago. And the next stage now is to run 2 workshops with elected members and managers. First one will be to identify and to have a very precise risk rating on all the risk identified. Just to give you an idea, I identified about 65 risks at the moment, climate change risk. However, amongst those 65 risks, not all of them have consequences. If I take an example, if we have the Greytown wastewater treatment plant being flooded, then the consequences may be high. But if we have an empty, a bare piece of land belonging to the council being flooded, then consequences will be very low. So it's still a risk, and that's why it will be presented, but it doesn't mean that all those risks have huge consequences. So that's for the risk and resilience strategy. As I said, so that was for the first workshop. And the second workshop will be run same again with elected members and managers. And it will aim to identify mitigation measures. So ideally, what we would like to see is to have at least one mitigation measure in front of each risk. So we are able to reduce our risk and consider it really well. So once all this work will be done, we are aiming to present the final strategy at some point in August, if I recall properly, at maybe finance and audit and risk, or maybe council meeting. It's still work in progress. But by August or September, the strategy should be all ready to go, which is amazing. And this piece of work will really help the council understand the climate change risk and mitigate those risks. So we should be a lot more resilient after that, which will be very valuable. The second big project we are working on at the moment is the Wellington Regional Climate Change Impact Assessment. So this project is run at a regional level. Wellington City very kindly offered to manage the project, and we have a core team with climate change officers from all the council in the region in it, and we have regular catch-ups amongst us, and also with consortium. So consortium led by BECA, but there's also NIWA and GNS Science, won a tender in April. The first phase of this project is to set up a methodology, and we should get a final methodology in late June, early July. And the final impact assessment should be available at the end of December this year. So, to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, this piece of work is really a regional assessment. When the first work I presented you, the risk and resilience strategy, is only the risk for our council as an organization and not for the district. So that's why those two pieces of work together, they go along really well, because we'll be able to have a very clear understanding of all the risk in the region, for the district, and also for our organization. So yeah, that's why it's important to have both of them, and they obviously follow the same kind of methodology, but not the same scope. Another piece of work is the regional emission rejection strategy. So once again, it's just same kind of project as a previous one. It is run by Greater Wellington this time, in the region, for the whole region. And it was started with regional growth framework. So far, we only had one meeting to start this work, this strategy. So there's nothing much to say about it. It will help the whole region reduce its emissions. But it's very much a work in progress, and I have not much to update you on. And the final big project we are working on at the moment are the energy audits. Carbon EES, they are our supplier, and they will come on the 15th of June in Martinborough Wellington Centre, in the offices, in the Greytown Town Hall, and in the swimming pool in Greytown to go through the buildings, through the assets, and understand how efficient or inefficient we are. They will also give us key points to increase our efficiency. And because we only went with level 1, just to give you a little bit of an explanation, there's 3 levels in the energy audits, 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 being the least detailed one, and level 3 being very detailed. Because we went through for the level 1, we will have a few key actions, and they shouldn't be very expensive, and we should have a short return on investment if we go with those actions. So it will be very interesting to see this result, and I think it will really help us to increase efficiency in those buildings. Just to explain you why we went for those 4 buildings, when in fact we have a lot more than 4, as you are all aware. It's just because they are the most, if I can say that, they are the hungriest one. They are the one who are using the most power, and that's why it's interesting to start by those ones, when we know that if we run actions to make them more efficient, we will really see a difference. In the following years, we will aim to do more buildings. But yeah, the first 4 buildings were the biggest energy consumer. And the last project was Restoration Day. I hope you all heard about it. It was on this Saturday, 28th. And we had different field trips, but also a talk, and it was quite successful. I was part of the support crew for one field trip, and it was really successful as well. I think really well received by the community. Really great work. It was done in a committee led by Greater Wellington. So it was a really good way to work all together and to deliver information and education for the community on the restoration. So yeah, if you have any question on any of those pieces of work, I will be happy to take them.
Does anyone have any questions now?
Yeah, thanks, Melody. Thanks very much for the work that you're doing around this area. It's obviously critical in this day and age. I just have a question that's actually not on your report, and it probably relates to risk assessment and the impacts of that assessment. And I'm coming in late on the piece here, but sea level rise and storm surge on our coastal regions and the impact that's having. How much work's being done around that at this stage?
So not long ago, maybe a month ago, NZ Sea Rise Project released all the data on sea level rise, and it also includes vertical land movement. You may have heard about it. It was everywhere in the newspaper. And sadly, the Wairarapa was pointed as the worst place in New Zealand. Not because of sea level rise, but mainly because of vertical land movement. Indeed, the Wairarapa is sinking the fastest. I think in some places we can have up to 8 millimeters per year. So that's quite frightening, really. So there is this piece of work that was released not long ago, as I said. There is also a piece of work that was released in 2019 from memory, and it's all about preparing coastal communities to sea level rise. And and they worked as a cell in the Wellington region because it's a report prepared for the region. And from memory, the cell, like the K Palliser cell, has quite a lot of vulnerability, especially because of the different communities and the roads. It's quite an interesting report, and I would be happy to share it with you all if you're interested. So, yeah, so those two pieces of work are being used in the Wellington Regional Climate Change Impact Assessment.
Yeah,
If I could have a question on that one, would the Melanie, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, the regional climate change impacts assessment include coastal retreat as well as as part of their COR? Yeah.
So Melanie might not be able to ask this, but answer this question to you maybe, Alex, in terms of our Warwick Combined District Plan. Does that identify those areas, risk areas, for instance, and for coastal retreat? Russell, sorry, Melanie.
Yeah, that's a topic that's currently in train for the district plan with Botham School. So I don't have any specific answer.
We have identified it in the spatial plan, though, as being areas of concern. So that we are very high level saying careful about zoning, careful about development. Yeah, future development in those areas. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
Just to add to that, so under the RMA reforms, there are three pieces of work legislation contemplated. And the one you hear the least about is actually the response to coastal setbacks and climate change adaptation. And that is to provide a toolbox in the RMA to make it easier to put in place coastal setbacks. There are communities around New Zealand that are trying to manage it in their own place, like Harmore Island. And it's very, very difficult because the impact on people's property values. So the government, one of the reasons for that piece of legislation is to increase the toolbox for local government and regional councils to actually put in place coastal setbacks.
Excellent.
Anyone else have any questions now? Yes, Alex.
Yeah, Melanie, regarding two things really, which is our energy audits and also risk and resilience strategy. What I'd love to see is coming out of this ideas that we could progress with regards to climate change through our normal council long-term plan. And I'd really like to see that coming through, even if they may be blue sky ideas, that we can pick up ones that as a council we can implement and carry forward. A lot of this is central government, but there's some I think we could be doing more that we're not. And in as an example, solar panels on all public buildings, on long-term lease to power companies has been carted but never actioned. Are we likely to see, are you able to do a lot more in that area with regards to suggestions for future council activities?
Yes, so first energy audits, they came out of the Ruamanga strategy we have for the council, and this risk and resilience strategy came out after the long-term plan 21-31. And obviously, by setting up mitigation measure in the risk and resilience strategy, and by having those actions point to increase resiliency in the energy audit, we will have key actions to make sure that we're moving forward in the right directions to both mitigate and adapt to climate change. So yeah, it will be something to put in the next long-term plan. Also, when we update Ruamanga strategy, it will be part of the action plan. So yeah, we have to make sure that those actions are not just on the paper and will be implemented to really do better in the climate change mitigation and adaptation fields.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. Anyone else have any questions? Melanie, I have one question, and I'm not sure, well, it covers two actually. I'm not sure whether you could answer that or whether that's something that should be directed to Mr. Wilson. But in the Wellington Regional Climate Change, they're going to have a consortium of specialist consultants. Do we have any idea of what our share of that cost will be? And secondly, when we do the energy audit, the same, we're obviously going to have specialists do that. So is there a extra cost to council for that?
Yes, we have a really clear idea of the cost. To be perfectly honest with you, I wouldn't be able to give the cost from the top of my head, but I could find them very quickly and send an email to you all, or if you give me, or I could even come back to you in a minute if I look in my emails. But it's not crazy price. For the impact assessment, it's about 5,000, more or less 5,000. And for the energy audits, it's about maybe 3,000 or 4,000. But I could give you the exact prices on an email.
That would be really lovely if you could do that, either by an email to us or in the next report you do, whichever is the easiest for you.
Yeah, or I will do an email, and I will also include a link towards a 2019 report on coastal communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the costs, I suppose the next question comes, where's the money coming from? Which budget is be impacted by this?
It is budgeted.
It is?
Yeah, it's in the governance, and so Mill reports into the governance policy part of our organisation, so it's in that budget.
So we knew that this was coming up?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much, Melanie, and it was great to hear that so many people participated with your respiration day. I was already doing something else, but certainly there were some good speakers and some good fun things to do. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay, so sorry, I forgot to do the piece at the beginning, which is to receive the climate change advisors report. Councillor West.
I'm putting my hand up
and,
to receive.
And here Alex has seconded it. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Right. The next item we've got is the action items report. Mr. O'Leary, do you want to speak to that?
Just one item, item 559, which is the, it's still there because it's a matter of process, which is producing a result on the pound, reviewing land options, which we've done the land investigation, so we've done that component, but the pound topic is still to come to fruition.
Okay. I think the pounds and the rest of the reports are used.
Madam Chair, through you, Madam Chair, do we have a time frame for that? So or are we just still working on various, because the options have sort of been considered, obviously, and you've set it on options in terms of pricing, etc. for the pound. Where are we at?
I could get just a need to update it. That we
Yeah, we got just
pound,
and I've read the report, but
any allied things and touch upon the tender process.
I'll wait for the report.
You wait for the report. So could we receive the planning and regulatory action items report? Thank you, Councillor Hay, Councillor Olds, all those in favour?
Aye.
Received. Thank you. we're combining C1 and D1 together. And Russell, Australia, we asked you to speak to your report. Maybe just whether there's items from C1 that you needed to mention that aren't updated.
No, not the case. So I'll talk to D1 and take councillors through.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
So across the teams, work tracks on with the teams. Planning has got their head across, officers have got their head across regulatory and getting the consents out with good decisions. And growth work, including Featherston Master Plan and District Plan Review. Building remains steady. Inspection numbers are up quite high. And you'll note within the update, councillors, that we've put some good thinking and recruitment in place successfully for technical specialist roles to support Sarah and the manager role there for building services, with 2 internal candidates being successful. We had we've got technical specialists with focus on building construction and all the modern requirements of building code, and the other is technical specialists for plumbing and drainage work, both in terms of advice and out in the field. And we're still on our mission to recruit a officer for processing of our building consents internally. So we're working with Sarah and HR to make that happen. In terms of...
Can I ask a question about that? If you've got any update for us on where Carterton are in terms of moving into a shared space?
That has been posed with them. We keep raising that with them. I don't have any date for you on that, but it's something that we have raised with Carterton to try and get confirmation from them. But there is space there for them, but they've got their own priorities at the moment. I can't. Sorry, council. Can't give you data.
And do you have any update on whether they're paying their share of that building?
That matter has been raised, and we're pursuing that.
We've produced it. They've been invoiced.
They've been involved.
They've been invoiced.
And
Just for the other,
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, with regards to kind of like the space that's not being consumed at the moment, it seems a bit of a pity to not be able to use it for staff.
We use it for hot desks, and we actually really encourage our staff to use that space.
Yeah.
To keep connected between, so staff keep connected with the team and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is in use.
thank you.
the other team, environmental services, usually always busy as well. Some of the flavour there of the work is investigating noise complaints, which the public has the right to do and raised to our attention, and there's been due response out in the field. Rick and his office is going to talk to landowners and assessing the extent of particular complaints that come up.
I'll just ask a question about that, Russell. Sorry, in the sense that you're talking about noise control complaints. I note in the graph that the numbers have steadily increased over the years, and I'm wondering if there's a trend attached to that. Also, second part of my question was, what are the costs associated with that? Are any of those costs recovered, or is that cost borne by council?
It's a public good component, and also investigation and response work, and also checking whether a complaint stacks up as being legitimate in terms of noise limits under the district plan rural zone, for example. So it's work we have to do as part of that duty.
Yeah, costs aren't recovered because it is a service that we provide, and we contract it out. The numbers, I would suggest, due to people working from home. So we've seen an increase within business hours of people working from home for the noise that they never used to hear because they work. They now hear. So we've seen that during the day, and then after hours is seeing them as well. And especially during the summer periods where the peak comes in, because the longer daylight hours means that people tend to have barbecues and that, but also it's hot, so people open their windows and doors and that, so that noise travels through. There has been an increase.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, and the question for Rick. Incorporated in the noise call outs, how many whiny dogs, or is that counted separately?
Separately, that comes under animal control.
Sweet, all right, thank you.
Yeah, another question for Rick is in terms of service attendance for noise control, when we contract that service out, obviously to a private company, during the day time, is that dealt with internally with our own staff?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's only the after hours for that.
Correct, yeah.
And would we have a dollar figure on what we actually spend on after hours noise control complaints? Because we'd be billed obviously from the company.
Correct.
For every attendance. So is that a fixed price or is it?
Yes, so they do a per call out fee, which we pay.
Right. And we wouldn't know just offhand what we've spent in the last 12 months on noise control call outs after hours.
Around about 34,000.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Rick.
Questions at the moment?
Yeah, the next heading is the proposed legislative change to RMA. Harry's given a bit of coverage on that. So we wait to see the government doing its thing in terms of a Strategic Spatial Plan Act and introducing that and seeing the shape of it, and also the Climate Adaptation Act in terms of its ability to put in place matters to help councils dealing with coastal impacts of climate change. So we wait and see in that space. The earliest one they got off the ground was the Natural and Built Environments Act, which was the substantive part of the existing RMA, which is dealing with the built environment. But I've left the diagram in there to the councillor's reference to see interlinkages between what's the government's intention. For the Subdivision Spatial Plan and the implementation of the Featherston Master Plan, I take you towards the end of the topic to well, firstly say that work continues on that in terms of engagement. Kendall's been undertaking engagement in that space, and we've been having meetings internally, so it rolls on. I've just come out of a meeting with DIA, Department of Internal Affairs, who support fair in their community initiatives. But other recent engagement that's happened is the likes of talking with reps of Booktown, the sports group, and we will have further officer and agency meetings coming up to meet with reps of the likes of Kaiwa Water, Wakakatahi, and Kiwi Rail, etc. Also, in terms of our work, we're mindful of having to discuss with the likes of Powerco as well. So all that works rolls on. Can I just first say that a clear update for the councillors is under 1.54, which is Featherston Master Plan work, and the town of Featherston has been captured in terms of Wellington Regional Leadership Committee, which is the implementation committee from Wellington Regional Growth Framework, and Featherston has been successful in being included 7th of the list of 7 growth areas. The term used is complex development opportunities, so very key focus areas for growth. Originally, Featherston was ranked about 13th on the list of 20-something, but as a result of recent meeting, Featherston is now placed directly on that list as a key growth area and complex development opportunity. I can explain what the basis of how it got on the list.
Mary Evans was first with a question.
And it's exactly to do with that. How are you seeing being included on the CDO list with the Regional Leadership Committee assisting in practicality with the master planning of Featherston?
It's recognition of the complexity of the master plan work we have to do in terms of the outcomes. There's also further liaison and discussion, the importance of that needs to happen with our discussion points with agencies, but also the potential for funding, for government funding to get the housing results and related outcomes that the master plan identifies. But part of that and further information on that would be forthcoming through our step-by-step liaison and discussions and sharing of information and seeing what government initiatives are and clarifying matters so we can get further information on what funding will come out of it. For example, NZTA, they will want to see a clear example of integrated land use planning for funding that they release. Kaingaora has funding support. They're wanting to, for example, support the area of Otaki in terms of housing initiatives, and they're also wanting to, we've got a good working relationship with their reps, so they want to see some potential future housing in Featherston, and that's, so it's further discussion and clarifying and putting questions back to them and asking those funding questions as well.
Thank you. But it's not just the funding that's imperative, it's also the layout of the actual town and then the businesses that actually come as a result of that. Are we prepared for that? Are we ready? Is there any, like, I know there are a lot of disused buildings within Featherston. What can we as a council do to move that along?
That's a point that came up this morning in our meeting with DIA and Fab Feather. For example, Fab Feather are today about to release their survey findings of surveyed the community on important points for the community, and that's one thing that came up in the meeting. It's something that we have to put into our foundation document, and for the Featherston Master Plan, our aim is to have a workshop with councillors to bring councillors up to speed of where our thinking is at in the form of our foundation document, Master Plan, and topic of activation of Main Street. The fact that the Main Street is sort of split in terms of some commercial, then
Residential.
and then commercial further to the north. So all these matters are going to be presented in a workshop we hope to have on the 22nd of June.
22nd of June, that's quite soon.
Yeah, so that's a very good reminder point, and it's a topic that we know we have to deliver on. And then just to round out your comment, to get the more active commercial results in the town, developers will be looking for certain level of population to support any commercial activity and endeavours. So we've also given an update from an economist who has been brought in, and this is through Kaingaora, and they've funded that's one example of funding support, of having an economist to give important advice as to commercial imperatives and commercial potential, and some external advice to help strengthen what we're doing. So I just thought I'd mention that as well.
So the key thing here is that so the government's got the urban development strategy. It doesn't want to interact with 67 different councils around the urban growth. So it's made it really clear that the only mechanism to access central government support or a number of initiatives is via the equivalent of a regional growth framework. It's called a future development strategy now. And so you don't get onto the table unless you're part of the regional picture. And so I think we are the only Wairarapa council that has actually been selected to be at the table for this development. So it's pretty cool.
It's probably because we started early, especially. So,
Bear in mind, there's a sub-list under this called projects to watch.
Yeah.
So there's a good vehicle or pathway to, as soon as something might be happening, we can put it on there and then they can decide whether to elevate it in that project. So if there's something happening in Greater or Martinborough or whatever, we can get that in there and shut it up.
So it basically just puts our foot through the door to be able to talk to central government about fossils.
I'll just ask one question, Lee, before you do yours. Russell, I presume that we're involving Ree in all this, and that she's up to date with where it's going.
She was in the meeting this morning.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we work very well with Ree because, but the thing is, you've got to test each other's ideas as you go along. And her and Richard Knott are our consultants.
Thank you.
Can I just respond to Councillor Hayes' point there about it was the spatial plan that, because we've done that work, but also because we're doing the and we saw the need to do the Featherston Master Plan, and it's an active project that also helped us get onto the list of 7. And for a moment, a lot of their focus was on, okay, let's look at metropolitan areas and what the potential yield is and what the bigger results are. But from further officer discussion, we had to round out some of that thinking and say, your list of 7 should be a representative list, and it should include those which are a little bit complex in terms of to untangle and get results on, and ones that are already in process. So that's some of the reasons why Featherston was placed 7th on the list of 7.
So we got to.
Yeah, another question.
So Russell, just thinking about light industrial zoning for Featherston, so where are we at with that in terms of the timeline?
We've got industrial zoning, which is district plan and the rationalisation of industrial further to the north, south of Masterton under the district plan. The potential of mixed use. We've got Featherston is a mix of residential and commercial. So there's got to be some rationalisation in what, when we come to talk to you about what our initial ideas are, that's one topic that we can discuss at the workshop, because there'll be a mix of views as to, if you have mixed use, do you include residential within it? There's probably wider thinking would be that you do include residential within it, because you've got to get results for the town in terms of some commercial and some housing. And then you get into the other related topics of where does medium density housing go? Do you bother with having high density and placement near the train station, placement on the main street, activation of the main street? So all those topics will be the flavour of stuff we look at on the 22nd.
So can I discuss this? Okay. So when you're thinking about high density under the spatial plan, are you looking at minimum or maximum heights? Are you thinking about the district? Are you not wanting to have 15 metres, something 3 or 4 story buildings? Is that personal?
No, can I answer it in 2 parts? Yeah, probably
I know that sits under the
It's more
district
combined,
plan.
Yeah,
Yes,
for the master plan, potential of how many levels development along the main street, for example, and should, if you were to go to a third level, should that top residential level be set back further from the road, which might have merit for noise mitigation and less visual dominance. So there's that. That's for the master plan. For the district plan, one of our last meetings was we gave a reminder of this currently 15-metre limit rule in commercial area. What should it be? James and I, we talked, and it could end up being 10 metres, for example, could end up being 12 metres, but the topic has already been fed into the district plan height limits.
Yeah, I knew that was, but sort of it's how the overlay between the two, you know, that's important.
And then even that topic, what do you get for 10 metres? How many stories do you get for 10 metres? How many stories do you get for 12 metres? And if you go to 12 metres, it isn't enough of a reduction from the 15.
So Russell, the workshop that we have on the 22nd, I guess we'll be notified about it sooner rather than
Yes.
later.
Yes.
And we can drill down on some of this detail, and I guess a lot of that will slot in with the revision of the Wairarapa Combined District Plan in terms of setbacks and heights.
Yes.
Lee, did you finish?
Yes, no, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Initially, with regards to our talks on master planning, have we had discussions or input from NZTA with regards to expansion and entrance points onto a state highway?
Yes.
And their responses to that?
It's a topic we need to further discuss with them, which we need to draw a further comment from them. The topics are furthest to be the arrival point as a town arrival point into the Wairarapa, speed, and related matters, but we need our next meeting with them that will be canvassed.
Concern has been raised to me by developers regarding NZTA's inflexibility with regards to development and the cost associated with changes on State Highway 2 as a result of any subdivision. And on the grounds they have no money.
Yes.
But it'd be very nice to have that clarified in order to allow growth along the State Highway network.
Brenda, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair. Russell, with the impending growth of Featherston, this also affects the infrastructure of the township. So do we actually have the capacity to be able to feed the extra additional water, get rid of the additional waste that's involved? What thoughts have you come to around that?
That's a topic that's been identified for further discussion with Wellington Water and information from them in terms of implementation and development of future infrastructure and the topic of even staged infrastructure development. So it's a matter that we need to have further discussions with Wellington Water.
Thank you.
Okay, so keep going. Probably
District plan.
District plan is
Just remind to signal out to councillors that rural subdivision, the thinking is that as part of the aim of protecting and preserving rural capacity and fertile soils in that district, attention to possibility of 40 hectare limit or requirement before someone can subdivide in a general rural zone. So that's a response to an issue. So that's one topic, which is rural subdivision.
Oh, good, thank you.
James and Bob from Miskel will also have discussions with owners in the rural special zone, which is used for wine growing purposes. So it's maybe development needs that they might seek as part of future policy shaping. Other topics have been heritage. They had a local heritage architect feed and reviewed our heritage signs. Natural hazards topic is further being worked on. We've given some prompt to Greater Wellington Regional Council in terms of the need to update their flood hazard maps, particularly in terms of the rivers in our southern portion of our district. So we keep asking for impetus for them to update the maps as they have to do. So just signalling some of the more recent topics in terms of district planning.
Just in terms, obviously there will be some consideration around the new fault lines that have been discovered of recent times. We've probably known about, but only just highlighted. So that will have an impact on future development in those areas. What about Russell, or is that still something that you're waiting for some more science in terms of making that determination?
No, we have to factor that on in terms of and test it. And Councillor Jepson, our next meeting, that'll be a topic that comes up, and we'll check the validity and potential impact of latest info. So,
okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pam. Just thinking about the district plan, are there any areas that there's a wild divergence of views on certain topics, or are you coming to sort of land on agreed perspective?
I'd say it's pretty, it's very collaborative actually, and pretty similar minded. I'm trying to think of one where there's a bit of disparity. No, like open space, rural subdivision, like considerations, whereas the likes of Masterton have got their some of their inner areas which they're working out and refining themselves, because the end of the day it'll be an amalgam of having the commonality on topics, but some of the separate topics reflect what's important to each of the three council. Councillor Jepson, do you see it like that? Or?
Yeah, I do. We have pretty good discussions around most things, but the general consensus is that we're on the right track. But as Russell said, there's a little bit of difference between Carlton and Marston and us, but there's trying to get things together that's going to work. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it's not going to be a very good plan. But I guess we'll get a lot of feedback when it goes out to consultation. No matter how good you make it, when you put it out for consultation, the quirks in there that you don't see. So, no, it's going on very well. The other thing probably you want to mention, Russell, is we haven't got to the chapter on coastal adaptation and retreat, but that's coming up, and that's
Great work, Chippy, you're doing. You announced it.
yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
And reminder point for Councillor Jepson and Councillor Plummer, active questioners, and the heads are right in that space in terms of trying to get appropriate answers and results in terms of new policy.
That's good. We get that. The current plan had some differences between the three towns already in it, so to add more or delete some or whatever.
Well, the original plan was done 13 years ago. Things have evolved a lot since then.
So it's really good. That's good. If you want to ask Rick to speak on that.
So
just before Rick does, because we're working our way through your report, I guess I've got a couple of questions in terms of Yeah. So we covered off on the noise control one. I had one on earthquake-prone buildings reports. We seem to have some reasonably outstanding ones in terms of requests for extensions and requiring engineers assessment, and 25 of them I have identified. How actively are we pursuing those building owners in terms of getting an engineer's assessment done? And what follow-up is there?
I can check that, but I would imagine Sarah with her officers are spreading their time across their different topics, and that will be something that they're investigating. But I can.
Is it possible for you to shoot us out an email just in terms of where we're at and yeah, if there are property owners out there swinging the lead a little bit.
I think you Madam Chair, we actually have a report on it. It would just be interesting for all of us to know.
Yeah, it would be good to be updated a little bit on where we stand in terms of our earthquake-prone buildings.
Just an update.
Yeah.
Yes.
A separate topic update.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, thanks, Russell. Appreciate that. Yeah.
I think we'll do the service levels and things like that, the other graphs and things after
Rick's
had a chance to have an update for us.
Cool, thank you.
When come up to say,
I'll sit here so no one crying.
Thanks, Rick.
Because I don't think I'll be able to answer this in one question.
Rick, can I give a little intro before you?
Please, sir.
So, precursor to the work was potentially finding out a site for a local dog pound, cost-effective dog pound, which is container-based design. So we've had that. We've been given assurance of the land is available, although the current farmer who's leasing it has just a few more months in terms of its lease. So it's now seen us in terms of effort, Rick working and getting the tender process up, and with some guidance from expertise guidance, just so we know we're doing things step by step 100% in terms of obtaining requests for interest and response from potential private firms to make the project come to fruition. So we're in the middle of that, and Rick has been doing that, and we've had some initial feedback, but I'll let Rick give a few more details and respond to any questions.
So with regards to that, I suppose it's also worth mentioning that this has been an outstanding item since 2016, Colin? Is that when it was first raised?
Yeah, probably around about there. I think it's been a little longer, but yeah.
Yeah. I know it's been on the books for a long time, and we've been actively trying to find the suitable site that would suit the whole of the South Wairarapa. It is a South Wairarapa item. So it'd be nice to see it closer to the door.
Yeah, so we've settled on a potential site, more than a potential, a proposed site, which is the old Featherston Golf Course. So we're endeavouring to look at a 40 by 30 metre compound. So that the compound includes exercise yards as well as where we would putting the storage in the containers to hold the dogs as well. And part of that, so that will be, if you're looking from an aerial photo down on it, that's to the right of the old greenkeeper's shed on the old site. And I've just realised I have a brilliant picture right in front of me, which would be helpful for others to see, which I will forward on so that you can understand where I'm talking about.
Can you share it?
I think it's in the report.
This one is I've got a bit more graphic one.
Nice.
So I'll forward that on. So part of this is we've settled on an area, and the original idea that if you go back to the archives was a consideration of an original pole shed type design. Unfortunately, that design wouldn't meet the compliance requirements that we need. Subsequent to that, we've looked at the old traditional structure of a bricks and mortar, where you hold the sheds inside, the kennels inside. I got asked 18 months ago to think outside the box, and we've come up with a container design. Part of that is also to ask whether we can actually go a bit further and consider in regards to how we're lighting it, but for want of a better word, and Mel would enjoy this, the green side of how we're doing it. So we've been very conscious in terms of reducing our footprint. We're conscious of the fact that if it needed to be moved, how movable was it? And also in terms of requirements in regards to dark sky reserve, we're also looking at lighting and what our footprint is. We've gone out to a procurement in regards to the containers, which is to build the kennels. And as Russell's mentioned, we sought expertise advice from a expert who does this on a regular basis, and they're providing us a light touch guidance, but providing us a heck of a lot more, if that makes sense. So we originally went out for a request of interest on the 4th of May. That closed on the 13th of May, and we got 3 expressions of interest from suppliers, 2 within New Zealand, 1 external, so 1 from Australia. We did an evaluation, so we have an evaluation team who looked at those and sought to shortlist, and we've done that. We did a request for proposal pre-call, so we spoke with the suppliers to get not only a even footing of understanding, but also for them to pose questions to us as well, in terms of what we were seeking, the scope, etc. Now that produced an absolute brilliant discussion, in that all the suppliers we got at the same time were very engaged and fully took on board our requirements in terms of we want to be innovative, but we are a small council. We don't have the reserve treasury banks, so they were very forthcoming in terms of what they were looking at, and very conscious of what we were trying to achieve, and we're excited by the fact that we'd gone outside the normal thinking, and we'd developed that even further in terms of how we're looking at power solutions and different things as well. So the excitement sort of came through the discussion as well. So part of that discussion, it came to an agreement that due to the scope of what we were asking, the specifications that we need to meet, we agreed to do it as a design and build. So I didn't want to hamper the supplier's innovation as part of the discussion that came through. So it was agreed with all the parties that a design and build proposal would be the best fit to actually understand the engineering experts. They've got design experts and design builds. So they're coming up with their innovation. We still have the ultimate control in terms of the final design. But to put that into perspective, these suppliers are actually using their structural engineers and the engineers and designers, and it would blow your mind at what the cost they're actually eating in terms of this design. So they're actually on board, and so with their thinking, they're actually willing to sort of eat most of that cost, so it's not on us. So I'm very excited by what they're going to propose. So that request for information, request for proposal went out on the 20th of May, and it closes on the questions from them closes on the 16th of June, and then the RFP closes on the 23rd of June. From that point, the evaluation team will look at and review the evaluations on the 27th of June, and by about the 4th of July, we should be looking at a preferred supplier and a contract setup in terms of that. As to the rest, so remembering that this is not just a a shelter part of it. We're actually building a whole compound. So we being Andrew, has gone out and got quotes in regard to the compound fencing, which obviously is, I would say obviously, but maybe not. It's a 6-foot fence that has to completely surround the whole compound with security measures in terms of that as well. We've gone out for what I call landscaping, and part of that is to include the access point, which had been raised by one of the other entities who we would share this main access point through. We've got that included into the quote. We need to scrape, obviously, the top because at the moment it's pasture, and get that as base course for that. And so we've got quotes for that. The lighting, we've gone as to lighting towers for obvious reasons to highlight the compound at night. And we've sought a solar solution. So they will be generated by solar and these lighting towers. And the other point is we originally looked at power and water, which has supply there, but unfortunately the power supply is not going to meet our needs. From the run is originally runs from the front gate. It's about 120 metres on a 16-mil cable, and it just doesn't provide the amperage for us to even run a light. So that we had two options. One was we took a 120 metre channel, dug out right through the whole thing to lay a cable for us to get power supply, or, as Worship will tell me, think outside the box and stretch your mind. And so we're actually looking at a solar solution where we would run solar panels and potentially use a trickle charge from the main power just to top up the battery should the solar energy not be enough for it. So we're currently investigating that, but it looks like it's a doable solution for us. We've got the dog runs, we've got 2 engineers that are coming back to us with that. We've got quotes on piling, which I thought would be quite easy, but unfortunately there's only about 2 suppliers and a lot of one that can actually do it. And we've got 1 quote from them. So the remaining to confirm is the solar option we're looking at, just to confirm the water tank. So with the water, currently it's run on a bore, which is down by the main plug rails. And there was concern that we may use a bit more water than the current tenants down the other end may want to provide us or sort of run that way. So we've looked at actually taking that offline and putting in a water tank to do that. So we will be self-sufficient in terms of our water, and they can maintain the nursery and that without having to worry, either one of us worrying about the water supply. So we're looking at setting that up. And then the final one is just the septic system, because this doesn't have a septic system, unlike the Johnson Street option in terms of that. That's basically you're as up to date as I am. So let the questions fly.
Right, before everyone raises their hands and wants to say anything, can I just ask one quick question? Rick, I think it's amazing the work you've actually done so far and the thinking outside the square. I think that's fantastic. Can you just tell me approximately what size water tank would you be needing for that? Because you will use a fair amount of water, depending on the number of dogs that are in the compound.
Yeah, we're not sure on that. So because the water usage is only going to be the wash down when we have dogs in there, and at the moment we're looking at about 4 dogs at a max. I was looking at a 15,000 litre tank, and Andrew thinks that's too much. So we're sort of seeking advice from the experts in terms of the potential water usage that we're going to do, and to see what they're actually going to come back with. And then we will do it, pump it obviously, so that it can run our water blast to clean it out. Yeah.
It's great, right? Questions, Mr. Old?
Rick, the $1 million question, of course. We've got a budget of $240,000. What's your expectations about being able to build? I mean, I love what you're saying, and I love the complex and the what we've got to look forward to. But are we going to be able to do this within budget? And that's, I guess, my question.
And that's a question I'd rather defer at the moment, because I'm just in the middle of what I'd consider sensitive negotiations with it. And the second thing is I don't know, because I haven't got the proposals from the container build to actually be able to do that.
I think that's very sensitive.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, but I obviously, if it's going to exceed our budget, then we need to be alerted to that.
But we don't know what it is. So.
But we've,
Well, your
Council-
council, I mean, you'll have some indication.
yeah, but Madam Chair, with respect, the council has agreed on a set sum.
That's correct.
And if it exceeds that, Rick knows full well that the resolution is that he needs to come back to council to discuss that with us. So, we'll wait and see how it goes.
Okay.
And I think while people are putting in quotes and doing things like that, it's too sensitive a topic to talk about.
No, that's understandable. Yeah, I accept that. Yep.
Right, councillor Hay.
Thank you. Great work you're doing, Rick. It's really innovative, and I suspect some of the companies might like to use this as a template for other areas in New Zealand or Australasia. Just thinking about the water tanks and the solar panels. So obviously we don't want to have to go through the exercise of expanding or upgrading facilities. So is your thinking that we're looking at 10-year future-proofing, 20 years, 8 years? How future-proofed are we with what we're proposing with water, solar panels, etc.?
So with the power, we're actually looking at 2 kennels. So the initial one is a build for one, but we're looking at ensuring that the power could fit if we did a secondary container for another 4, or if another local council wanted to join in on our plan, we'd have room for them to be able to put this another container on there as well. So we have future-proofing that in terms of that. The beauty of what I've talked to one of the guys is that we're looking at, because I asked that question as well, if I had to increase this, how would I do it? And he's saying the beauty of it is that we can add battery banks. And so that will take your panels up to the next point, but you can add battery storage so that you use the power. The beauty of this, unlike, is that we won't have a massive charge or a down draw, because most of the kennels is going to be around the heating and cooling and the air transfer system, and that's only when dogs are in there. So there'll be an initial large draw, but then it's the maintenance of it. And because the beauty of this is that it's a 20-foot container as opposed to 20 by 25 bricks and mortar structure, we're not heating a massive amount of area, cooling it down. But yes, we've thought in terms of how many banks of battery storage that we need. In terms of that, and the water would be the same. We're looking at that double capacity in terms of our initial cost, so that we don't have to then suddenly upgrade it again.
So thank you.
Cool.
There have been kind of like public comments with regards to people being concerned that why are we taking on a dog pound? Why shouldn't we just ask the local dog pound local dog kennels to take on these dogs? Do you know of any dog kennels that would consider taking on a dog of unknown quality and unknown inoculation, for the want of words, that would actually take that on?
I think if you actually dive into the devil's in the detail,
yep.
You'd be asking a private enterprise to accept a non-known history,
yep.
whether it's vaccinated, whether it's got parvo,
yep.
Whether it's got any disease whatsoever, and into that establishment. The second thing would be we would need, we being the territorial authority, would need certainty into how many kennels we could get at a 24/7 basis.
Yeah.
And therefore the operator's then got to say, well, if you're taking out 4 kennels on a 24/7, 365-day a year, I want X amount. And in recent cases, it's come to through up north somewhere, and I apologise, I can't remember its specifics of where it was. There was a dog that went into a private facility and attacked 8 dogs within there, And the arguments now is who holds the liability in terms of that, because you as the owner, who've put your dog in their care, there's a duty of care for that item to you to keep your dog safe and how that works in. And again, those discussions would need to be had. And from my research on it, if it was a proposal that had merit, someone would have done it by now. And I believe the reason why is because once you get into that detail of disease management, the liability in regards to dog management, it becomes too onerous. And so it's either they'll be charging you an exorbitant amount to cover that, or they just want to do it.
Yeah, that would make sense for us to actually take on this project.
I also think part of this is to remember that also pound facilities become an emergency centre should a civil defence matter, and that's assuming that we're not underwater and we have access to it, we would be called upon to be able to take people's dogs in a safe environment. So that's also another service that the council needs to provide.
Yeah.
And then just one other question. What journey can we take our ratepayers on? Because I mean, this has been outstanding for quite some time. So are we going to, once we actually sit on a solution, what journey can we take our ratepayers on saying, look at this fantastic, can we say, look at this fantastic up and coming project that we've got going?
I think we're better to deliver it.
Yep.
Rather than promise.
Yeah.
What's the old thing? Over promise and
Yeah,
under promise.
But we're contemplating for the future.
Yeah, in addition to Brenda's comments, we did discuss the responsibilities of a government required service and its incompatibility with possibly a vet or a dog pound and a kennel, and the different standards, the different liabilities, and the prosecutions that could occur. And I think we just decided, we carefully looked at that and found it was incompatible.
Can I, Bridget, just given that we don't know what's going to happen with the three waters, if we were to sell the golf course, is that going to be subdivided off the area?
Those are decisions you are able to make as a council.
And just an observation, if we're going completely off the grid, long term that will have financial benefit for council.
Well, reduce the financial costs. So
Plus also
capital outlay versus your ongoing operating.
And if we have a transpower issue, that the pound is still operating correctly, like we did a couple of weeks ago.
Green impact would be beneficial.
Oh, look, it's a way of the future.
On water storage, though, I think the cost of a 30,000 versus a 15,000 is minimal. The more storage you have,
I was going to quietly have a word to Rick about that.
Sorry, Rick, just one last question. Have you received any objections from the neighbouring area?
No, no.
Good. Great, thank you.
I presume, have we applied for resource consent?
Sorry, just before you do, Russell's been waving his hand at my side.
Rick covered off the liaison that's been had, and we've met with reps of Dr. Mokai, and they're sharing ideas and what their aims and desires are in terms of continued use of their facility and our intended facility. So that's been had as well.
It's great. Sorry, Colin.
No, it's okay. I just wondered whether or not we applied for resource consent to have that located there, but here it's just, for me, it's a permitted activity. So it doesn't require a resource consent.
I think we're through that as well.
One plus. Lots of pluses.
Are we going to invite Carterton to possibly?
Why not?
Yes.
Might be the cheaper option. We don't know. I mean, we don't know the costs yet. So until such time as I guess this is all nailed down.
I think we're all going to wait
Yeah,
Very,
anxiously.
very interesting.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Move from holding his breath.
Oh, look, and I've said to Mr. Wilson about this as well, is the fact that it's easy to talk about in theory, and Andrew and I are starting to sweat a bit in regards, because we've set the bar very high. Our expectations is really high. As I said to Andrew, if we pull this off, this is absolutely the tool that we've created in terms of this, and the decision by council to be able to think outside the box and look at that innovation. I think if we get it right, and I'm not saying it's going to be 100% right, but if we get it right, it's going to be a blueprint for other smaller councils that find this need. And the fact that we've made it quite, the footprint is as low as we can, I think is going to excite a lot of people as well. So
I just think it's absolutely amazing, and take my hat off to you and Andrew for the work you've done and the thinking you've put into this.
So one final question, we've got a line in the sand drawn now because the 27th of June is the evaluations of any RFPs or prices, etc. Is that that's what I'm...
that's when it closes for the RFP.
Yeah, then they close, yeah, so early July you'll have a decision in terms, so our next planning and regulatory meeting you'll be able to present a report that will state everything and commencement dates, etc., etc., etc. Is that correct? No pressure, Rick.
At a later date.
No, I'm trying to get to, this has been dragged.
You'll have an update.
So long. Well, yeah, for sure, but I mean, some decisions need to be made so that we can get actions happening.
4 weeks is not going to make any difference.
It's just the way things slide at the moment with surprise and different things. I wouldn't want to commit myself to something and then find out that I'd have to delay on it. But I'm an optimist.
The biggest variable is in every rocket site to work this out, the cost of construction.
Oh, I know.
Materials
Oh,
are just
I
going
know.
through the roof, left, right,
Exactly.
centre, and the availability of materials to actually do things, and that's the variable.
Yeah, and we've been
We
signalling,
don't have-
that's been signalled all the way through these discussions, 100% here and a little bit here and a little bit there, so we'll be prepared, I guess, at the end of the day.
I'm hoping you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Oh, great.
So do we.
So will we.
And look, just to
Hate will come your way if it does.
So, I mean, I just want to commend Rick and Russell and the team. In this, Rick obviously has never done this before.
Right.
So what we've taken the opportunity is to get an independent advisor to assist with the procurement, the design methodology, so that Rick isn't carrying that burden himself. And it is a local person who's doing that, which is really good. So just that you know that we're buttressing as much as we can to provide support to Rick to do this.
Fantastic.
It's not on his all.
No, good on
Awesome. Rick, do you just want to stay there because there may be some questions of you with regard to some of the service levels. So just stay there and then you can answer those as well. Russell, do you want to? I think we'll rush reasonably through this because
I was just going to say the power topic. Think on your feet and solve, because if we use solar power, we're going green. Other councils head down the track if they whack solar power panels on the roof of their main building or whatever, or do it that way. Well, we're thinking scale and fit for purpose and opportunity, so it's good. And the other thing about the power, if it gets fully across the line for a suitable design figure, I reckon it's a candidate, for example, of innovative thinking and project for local government New Zealand.
I think it's one that we submit for the awards. Yeah.
Let's get it built first.
Yeah.
So I just sorry to jump back. I just wanted to say to councillors, the only other thing I didn't say was district plan topics, provision for water tanks for non-potable water use in the backyard for new builds. That was a topic that came up recently, and so come forward as a requirement. But the thinking there is be mindful of placement of them, how far away from boundary, and probably not in the front yard. not forward of the house.
Are we going on to
Yeah, we're going.
reports? I've got one question. Are we speaking to them or do we just take them as read and we have queries?
Just taken as read, and if you've got any questions for
Look,
Russell or Rick, we can just go.
Just with regards to building consents, I see for the first time in draft that we've hit triple figures, which is 50 to 60% more than average. How is the team coping with that volume?
Fingertips. I mean, this is, you do know that in terms of New Zealand, building control officers are scarce as hen's teeth. So looking after our staff is a high priority. Recruitment is an issue in terms of trying to keep on top of the workloads. We do have the ability to use, what's the online? There's an entity that's been established by local government.
New Zealand building certifiers, I think.
Yeah. So we have the ability to, if you like, contract out certain level of work as well. So it's not just all inside our team to process, and we do use that. We do use that service.
What is the forewarning going through for May, June figures? You know, is that trend continuing or is it pulled back? Because this is a real concern for risk, you know, that we're not going to be compliant. But it's great that we have resources to call on, but is this the new normal? I don't think so.
I think the team's always busy.
Yeah.
When I talked to Sarah about it, the latest thing is the busyness in the inspectorial duties and getting around the towns and the district and doing that. But as Harry's mentioned, you know, doing that coping, that's something we've got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, we're also lifting the understood. So remember, there's a basic level of processing, but there's specific areas of expertise like structural engineering or plumbing and various things. And so we're trying to. We've actually just had 2 staff members go successfully through training, which means that they now have reached a higher level, which means we can deal with more complex work inside our team. So we're constantly trying to build the upskill and keep that and build our capability with resources we have.
So Russ, was May similar? I know you haven't reported it. It might be off the cuff, but was it a similar level of busyness trying to get at?
I don't think we've got that, and we'll have to find out, Alex. But I'd be confident it is. I'd be very surprised if we're seeing any reduction in the numbers coming through.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Does anyone else put any?
The booming. The town's booming.
Yes,
the district is booming.
I had one probably falls under Rick as the bylaws that trees and hedges is that getting winter was a quiet downtime of that, but we seem to have put out more notices this month. To those, it's jumped quite dramatically from previous months.
Yeah, so it's probably we're a bit more proactive this year. We had heard comments through a couple of the community boards of concerns with the overhangs and the dropping of leaves and that. So we were quite conscious, and the lads went out there, and especially through Greytown and Featherston and Marlborough, they looked at that. So that was the increase in terms of notifications.
That's great.
So we took a proactive approach rather than just a reactive. So that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, so rather than wait for the complaints that Mrs. Jones was finding it hard to walk on because of the slipperiness of drop fruit or that we took a proactive approach and actually went out there and just reminded people to look at that coming up.
Great.
It does, on the graph, it does seem to be that time of year.
Yeah.
So there are two points every year that.
And then there'll be another spike in spring, obviously, once the new growth comes through.
Yeah, from the previous ones, the spikes were in October, November, but that proactiveness is really good. I was disappointed to see that there was quite a few more abandoned vehicles this time.
That'll get worse.
Yeah.
Alex, used car yard.
So, sorry, Brenda.
Do we know if Toastmaster is going to go ahead and are we all suited up for that?
Toastmaster is going ahead in November. It's been confirmed.
So, Rick, good luck.
Not bad.
We've got the title in place, haven't we? So
Yes, that's right.
it should actually flow through quite easily. It will simplify it for this time.
So that's just, Hayden just needs to work out that time.
Oh, I don't think I have any other comments on that. Anyone else have anything they want to ask? Well done. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Actually, I could mention something. You notice that at the end under appendix, whatever number, appendix 1, the Regional Leadership Committee, just to give you a rising level of discussion is with regards to iwi capability and the ability for them to react to not just council but also governmental committees and consultation. It's a real issue for the whole Wellington region, and they are talking about government and the funding and the process and the identification is a very large area. I understand the Regional Council has funded Mastered and iwi some money from a capability perspective. So we just watch that space, but be aware that it's a real issue and it may come to us in the future for funding in part. Yeah.
Now, I just need to go back because I suddenly realised that I didn't receive the C1 and D4, D1, I should say, C1 and D1 reports. So could I have a mover that covers both of those? Thank you, Mary Alex. C1. Oh, C1, I think. So we don't have to do it again? No. Just D1.
Just D1.
Yeah. So Mary Alex and Councillor West. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Lovely, carried. Thank you. That concludes our planning and reg meeting for today. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.